Mic check. Mic check. Mic does. Mic check. 3. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2. Check at all. Check mic check. Hello. Hello. Mic check. Mic check 1. Okay. So, my microphone is only partially working. I don't know what's going on, but it was like this last video. I fixed it before I started recording, and now that I'm recording again, it seems to be doing the exact same thing. Not 100% or why. Weirdly, if I talk slow like this, it cut out again right there. Sorry, folks. Okay, let's try that. Doesn't seem to have worked, unfortunately. I don't know, guys. I'm not sure what's going on. Hello, mic check. Hello, what's going on? I'm real sorry, guys. I'm not sure if... Hello. Okay. Hello? Mic check? Mic check? Okay. Nope. Still doesn't work at all. Yo, this is crazy, man. Okay. I switched my audio device. I have no idea how this is going to sound. I'm sorry if it doesn't sound great, but I'm literally using the audio on my camera. Again, I have no earthly idea how it sounds, but hopefully this will at least allow me to get through this recording and figure out what's going on with this. But I apologize for the delay. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. It looks like, according to my systems here, that everybody can hear me okay. But if you can't, then this is going to be a wash. But again, I've had so many problems with my audio for the last several months. It just seems to be one thing after another after another. But we're going to get through it. But anyways, what's going on, guys? I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to kind of bring this to you. What I'm going to be talking about today, if you saw the title, I'm just going to be giving my reactions to the second round of the NBA playoffs. All four series, kind of talk it through, what went right, what went wrong, what I got right, what I got wrong. And then obviously we'll talk about a little bit of the future, predicting the Western Conference Finals that will start tonight, predicting the Eastern Conference Finals that started last night. And obviously we'll talk about that amazing Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals that happened last night as well. If you're new here, I would say subscribe. Honestly, wouldn't blame you if you chose not to, just due to the crazy audio issues I'm having. But, you know, it is what it is. We'll work through it. We'll get through it. But I would appreciate a subscribe. That would be lovely if you could do that for me if you haven't already. But let's start with the most obvious that I'll be talking about given my fandom, and that is the series between the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I said on this podcast, on this very podcast, that I was more afraid of the Cleveland Cavaliers than I think most people were.
And it was a combination of multiple different things. Number one, I was just very high on the Cavs and their roster to start the season. I understand that since Donovan Mitchell has gotten there, Darius Garland has taken a huge step back. His growth has pretty much stunted completely. He was an all-star, a guy that everybody thought could average 30-plus points a night. But unfortunately, that does not seem to be even remotely close to what's going to be happening in his future, because even without Donovan Mitchell on the floor, he was not able to do that. But I loved what Evan Mobley did as a rookie. And then obviously last year, he kind of stayed relatively the same. He might have regressed slightly, but you expected kind of a leap forward with some more talent around him, some more room to grow. A little bit less pressure on his shoulders, and it just didn't end up happening. A combination of injuries to a lot of the people in the starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and of course to Evan Mobley himself, kind of makes me believe that he couldn't quite get into a rhythm. His confidence wasn't all the way there by the time we got to the playoffs, and so yeah, he was mildly ineffective in the first round of the playoffs. In the second round, he was significantly better, of course, but just not where they needed to be. And then, of course, Donovan Mitchell. I don't really have many questions about Donovan Mitchell. He's an alpha. He's a number one guy. He's a guy that can drop 35 points on any given night if he gets hot from the field, and a guy that can carry you in the postseason and can definitely step up in those big moments. So I was a little bit more afraid of Cleveland just on a roster perspective than a lot of people were. But then also, of course, because of my Boston PTSD and the fact that, quite frankly, I really haven't had a year since maybe 2018 that we've overperformed in the playoffs. It has always just kind of been vast underperformance after vast underperformance after vast underperformance. So, yeah, not super thrilled with that, but at the same time, I had confidence. I obviously the Celtics are the better team than the Cavs, but I said Celtics in 7, and so that was again a combination of me being higher on the Cavs roster than perhaps other people, and just the thought of the Celtics underperforming and not showing up for 1 or 2 games in the series, and then the Cavs get their confidence and they actually beat you in Cleveland for a game where you actually play well, but it doesn't matter because Donovan Mitchell goes 12 for 13 from 3 or just something insane, and then suddenly you're up. It's tied 2-2. You got to figure it out. And then here you go. But it didn't end up happening, and I'd much rather be happy and wrong than miserable and right. And so yeah, that's fine. And again, a lot of a few close games in there. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell got hurt in Game 3, didn't play in Games 4 or 5. Jarrett Allen didn't play the entire series, and Caris LeVert missed Game 5 as well. So, you could take all those things with a grain of salt, but regardless, the Boston Celtics showed their dominance. They went out there, they took care of business. I didn't make too much of a stink about losing Game 2. To the Cavs. The Celtics tend to do that if they blow somebody out in Game 1. It's not a shock. It shouldn't be a shock anyway. It is ridiculous, admittedly. It's getting quite annoying because, you've obviously got the second round, or excuse me, the Eastern Conference Final Series coming up with the Pacers, and every time a Game 2 rolls around, I just have a massive knot of anxiety form in my chest and in my stomach because I just can't wait for the Celtics to give up 155 points tomorrow night. But it is what it is. They took care of business. That's all that mattered. At the end of the day, they were able to just win games when they needed to. They were able to hang on. They were able to win a close game. I think it was Game 5 that they ended up, it was a reasonably close game where, they really needed to step up in clutch time, and they did. They ended up separating right at the very end of the game, and that's all she wrote. And now, Celtics got a bunch of games of rest. Kristaps Porzingis looks like he's going to come back in Game 4. Imagine if we didn't take care of business. He may have come back, Game 2 or Game 3, or maybe even, later than that. I'm not sure. It just depends, right? So, if the series had started earlier because we didn't take care of business, or if other teams didn't, took care of business at the same time we did, then Kristaps might not be coming back till game 5, 6, or 7, or even maybe he's out until the finals, which I wouldn't love. I'd love to see him out there, even if it's just for one game for 20 minutes before the finals, just get a tune-up, like something. I got to have something, if not more than that, of course, ideally. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk more about the Celtics, obviously, later in the video once we get to my reactions to Game 1. And obviously, I'll talk about the Celtics a little bit just naturally when we talk about the Pacers as well. And speaking of the Pacers, Knicks and Pacers, probably I don't know if it was the best series, because Denver, Minnesota was just a train wreck. I mean, it just made no sense. That whole series was just one catastrophe after another for both teams, it seemed. But the Pacers-Knicks was another fantastic series. Obviously, it went 7 games. I predicted it would go 7 games. I honestly can't remember what my initial thoughts were. I think my initial prediction was Knicks in 7, just because I didn't anticipate the Knicks losing on their home floor, and I didn't think the Pacers, given how beat up the Knicks were, would be able to physically be capable of losing on their home floor to that team. But I think I might have said the Knicks in 7, but once OG Anunoby went down, I'm surprised the series went as long as it did. Obviously, it's a testament to the will, the guts, and the heart of the New York Knicks. And by the time Game 7 was over, I was rooting for the Knicks to come back just because I would rather the Celtics play a team that literally has nobody out there that can do anything. I mean, that's just... that's how sad it was. I mean, Jalen Brunson broke his hand, and Josh Hart, he was out there scratching and clawing, but he had some messed up ribs. OG Anunoby played like 5 minutes and couldn't do anything. He was ineffective because he couldn't move because his hamstring. And obviously, we know Mitchell Robinson was out for the year. Bogdanovich was out for the year. Julius Randle was out for the year. So it just was a whole mess for the Knicks. And again, it's a testament to their will. And their skill, of course, and the leadership of Jalen Brunson and those other Villanova Wildcats out there with Hart and DiVincenzo, that they even made it as far as they did. I mean, they certainly should not be ashamed in any way of how their season ended. But obviously, you hate to lose Game 7 on your home floor. And, of course, the Pacers broke the record for the highest field goal percentage in a playoff game in NBA history. So, that's not the best way to go out, but... Again, there's only so much you can do when everyone on your team is, on crutches or in sweatpants or, just like in the trainer's room because they actively got hurt in that game. Like, it just was a disaster for the Knicks. And there's always going to be the what if, right? What if they had been able to stay healthy? What if they were able to kind of figure this whole thing out and stay together? Could they have won the championship this year? We'll never know, but there's always next year. Chances are they're going to keep that most of their roster, if not the entirety of that roster, together for another go-round. And hopefully Tibbs learns his lesson and does not try to destroy these guys in the regular season and in the playoffs so that by the time they get to the Eastern Conference Finals or NBA Championship or whatever, they'll actually have a team that's not, Miles McBride and Precious Achiuwa playing 30 minutes a night. Like, that's not going to win you the NBA championship. No offense to Miles McBride or Precious Achiuwa. Both of them played admirably well given the circumstances, but that's just not going to do it when you've got all those juggernauts out west, when you've got Boston, when you've got Milwaukee, when you've got Cleveland, when you've got all these other top teams, and now Indiana, of course. And speaking of Indiana, obviously, they were the victors. To the victors go the spoils. And the Pacers... a lot of people have been giving the Celtics a lot of junk for, having an easy road to the Eastern Conference Finals. Well, the Pacers had a reasonably easy road as well. They got a Bucks team with no Giannis and for half of it, no Damian Lillard. So, the two best players, they basically were playing Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and a bunch of no-names. And then, obviously, in this series, they played the Knicks G League team by the end. And so, they had a reasonably cupcake schedule as well, even though I don't really look at it that way. You can't do anything. You just have to beat who's in front of you. But the Pacers struggled to beat both of those teams. And so I think it was kind of interesting going into this series now with Boston, of course, that had started last night. You know, everybody was saying that the Pacers were going to get overwhelmed, and I just don't look at it that way because I think that you can score, if you're the Pacers, on just about any defense that's ever lived. I mean, they just don't ever stop running, cutting, screening. They cause absolute mayhem on offense. They make you confused. I have not seen the Celtics, and again, I know we'll talk about this game more, but I haven't seen the Celtics so confused on defense in terms of communication all year long. And that's just a matter of their brains sometimes, it seems, are not quick enough to be able to actually like switch on everything or stay on everything in that such a limited amount of time, because it's crazy. I mean, it is really, really crazy how fast the Pacers kind of can just go and go and go. So, you know, good for the Pacers. Everybody on this channel knows how much I love Tyrese Halliburton. If you haven't checked out the short podcast I did with Evan Reed last week, check it out, because it was before the Knicks even played Game 6, or excuse me, the Pacers even played Game 6 against the Knicks, of course. And, you know, we speculated what a Pacers-Celtics series would look like. And obviously now it's come to fruition. And so I'm really excited for Evan. Obviously they haven't had a lot of postseason success in quite a while. Last time they made the Eastern Conference Finals and the playoffs in general was 2014, so it's 10 years ago. So really excited to see, you know, where this team goes from here. But obviously, the Pacers have about the worst matchup they could possibly have in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, if I were them, I'd rather play Minnesota or Dallas. And, of course, they're going up against Boston, who have been there 6 times in the last 8 years, 5 times in the last 7 years, you know, for Jason Tatum, 6 times in the last 8 for Jaylen Brown. They obviously have a guy now in Jrue Holiday that's gone all the way to the finals. Wild, by the way, just kind of quick side note, Derek White said this yesterday, I think, before the game, where, you know, he almost takes for granted going to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics, but Jrue Holiday put into perspective how many good teams he has been on, and the only time he went to the Eastern Conference Finals was with the team, with the Bucks that won the championship. You know, so basically he went 1 for 1, right? Like he went once, they won it, and then they won the title. So he made the most of the opportunity. But this is only the second time in Jrue Holiday's career that he's been to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I was not aware of that. I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, the Bucks have been eliminated in the second round of the playoffs a bunch, and then obviously New Orleans made the playoffs with Jrue Holiday, and they never made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, like, looking back, it makes sense, but like I guess you just didn't think about it. And now, obviously, Jrue Holiday gets another chance. He's going after another championship, and hopefully, I believe, hopefully, the Celtics can finish the job. So, but regardless, the Pacers had just a bad matchup at this point. Even after Game 1, I am still saying that. I think that Boston is just better than Indiana in every way outside of maybe just transition offense and just the pace that the Pacers play with. But they're not better on defense. They're not better in rebounding. They're obviously not better in interior protection. They're not better at defending the three-point line. They're not better at taking care of the ball. They have a much worse turnover percentage. The Celtics were the best team in terms of taking care of the ball in the regular season. They are not doing well at that in the postseason, but you expect that to kind of jump up with the kind of increase in level of intensity in the playoffs, but it's gotten like 50% higher. Like they were averaging 11 turnovers a game in the regular season. I think they're averaging almost 16 in the playoffs, which is almost a 50% jump from the regular season, of course. So crazy stuff, but I just think that the Pacers are going to have a hard time. They obviously went through 2 grueling series, and now they got to play a well-rested Boston team for the rest of the series. It's going to be tough. And then, of course, Kristaps Porzingis might come back as well later in the series, so we'll see how the Pacers respond. But I'm happy for them. I hope that they take this as an opportunity to go to the NBA Finals, because they have a big chance to. When nobody thought that they were this ready to go in the playoffs, they have a chance to prove the world wrong. And I'm happy for him. I love Tyrese Halliburton, obviously, so I wish him all the success in the world. But obviously, I'm hoping the Celtics take care of business. Moving on to the West, we'll start with the series that I watched the least of, just to be honest, because again, just timing with everything always being on super duper late here on the East Coast, it's kind of hard for me to stay up on work nights a bunch and watch, Dallas and the Thunder. I did get to see some, but obviously not a whole lot. So I guess I just owe the Mavericks an apology. First things first. I said that they were going to be eliminated by the Clippers in the first round. I didn't trust Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic to be able to carry this team in the playoffs. Now Luka's hurt, and so I really thought that they were going to get smacked by the Thunder, but I guess suddenly both of those guys woke up and said, I'm going to be first team all defense now. And PJ Washington is now fully out of that Charlotte state of mind and is fully in playoff mode. And then, of course, I can't understate the difference that Daniel Gafford has made on not only Derek Lively and his ability to kind of play with higher energy and lower minutes, but that team as a whole. I mean, they just, his defense, his presence on the interior on offense, and just his leadership on both ends of the floor. I mean, they have really turned things around defensively in Dallas. That's the most impressive thing to me. At one point, they had the statistically worst defense in the NBA. They were losing game after game after game because of how poor their defense was, and they have fully embraced the quote-unquote defense wins championships mindset, and they have turned things around on defense. Obviously, Josh Green is a good defender and always was. Even Tim Hardaway is showing flashes of good defense at times, although he's never really been that great of a defender, so I don't know how long that's going to be able to last. But regardless, I owe the Mavs an apology. So I'm sorry, Dallas. I'm happy that you're here. This series is a toss-up for me with them in Minnesota, guys. It really is. I'll let you know what I think is going to happen, obviously, later on. But congrats to the Mavs. And if you're the Thunder, honestly, like, not that I don't care. That's not the right verbiage. But, like, you didn't win the championship this year. That's okay. You have the brightest future in the entirety of the NBA if you're the Thunder. You have 18 billion first-round picks. You have a bunch of cap space. You have two guys now in your starting lineup that can get you good pieces if you're willing to trade for people. In Lou Dort, and now I think Josh Giddey has got to go. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I feel like he's almost the entirety of the reason that they lost this series. And it's tough to put things on one person, but literally they just didn't cover him. They didn't guard him when I was watching. I mean, they literally were just leaving him by himself, and he was just missing shot after shot after shot after shot. Like, he just, I don't know what happened to his jump shot. Maybe he goes into the offseason and fixes it because he wasn't this bad of a shooter before the season. I know he's gone through a lot of stuff off the field with all the pedophilia allegations that ended up being false, or at least I think they ended up being false. I hope that they ended up being false. Otherwise, why in the world is he still playing? But I'm sure that takes a toll on you emotionally, mentally. I can't imagine. But his shot wasn't this broken before the season started, and now it seems he's really struggling to put the ball in the basket. He's really struggling with turnovers and kind of finding guys that are open, which that was never an issue with him. So obviously he's got to get to work in the lab. Otherwise, his time in OKC is probably going to be close to over at this point. I love Lou Dort, but, in a world where, most of the teams that are left, actually, that's not even really true, which is crazy to me to think about. I just thought about it. I was like, I guess I've just been so used to the best players being wings, like LeBron, Jason Tatum, obviously, Kevin Durant, guys like that are wings, being the best player on the floor. Actually, really, the only team that the best player on the floor that's left as a wing is the Celtics. So that's really interesting. I guess I didn't think about that. But, in a world where you want to have dynamic wings, Lou Dort is just not that. I mean, he's an average three-point shooter and a good defender, but you can definitely upgrade. That's a spot you can afford to upgrade if you are the Thunder. He's got a nice tradable contract. I think he's making around $18 million a year. That's not that bad. And you've got obviously plenty of cap space. Now that Gordon Hayward is going to be a free agent, that takes $30-some million off your cap. We'll see what happens. But right now, I think, Josh Giddey and Lou Dort probably going to, they're going to have to look to upgrade. And if they do, I mean, they basically have the pick of the litter. I mean, anybody who is available for trade in the NBA, whether it's Kevin Durant, whether it's Donovan Mitchell, like whoever it is, the Thunder have to be the favorites to land them because they just have a billion first-round picks. Like, if they wanted to, they could say, yeah, take Lou Dort and 7 first-round picks, and they'd still have a first-round pick every year for the next 7 years, if not multiple first-round picks every year for the next 7 years. Like, they just have a million draft picks. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see where they go. So, again, if I'm the Thunder this year, all right, we didn't win, but they had a great year. Shea should have won MVP, in my opinion. Obviously, you got a huge, basically any other year in the history of the NBA, Chet is Rookie of the Year, but Victor Wembanyama is an absolute freak. So that's just how it goes. And then, obviously, J-Dub, right? He could have won Most Improved Player. Should not have won because Kobe White should have won, but they gave it to Tyrese Maxey. Which, again, if you're an all-star caliber player before you win Most Improved Player, you should not win Most Improved Player. That's just how I think most people would probably look at that. But Kobe White was about to be out of the NBA, almost. Like, people were like, what is he still doing here? Like, he's not good. And then he turned himself into a fringe all-star this year in 1 year. That is the definition of Most Improved, but obviously it didn't happen. So we'll see where the future goes for the Thunder, but I'm really excited for the Thunder. I think that they're going to win a championship in the next 2 to 3 years because they're just going to have 18 All-Stars on their team because they could just trade all their draft picks and then just go all in and go nuts. So we'll see what happens, but moving on, the best series, in my opinion, and it's not even, I'm not even going to say it's not even close. It is close, but to me, the best series of the entire second round. Nuggets, Timberwolves, the two kind of prohibitive favorites going into this series to make it out of the Western Conference. And man, it looked like it was going to be all Minnesota, didn't it, guys? I mean, I said it on this podcast. I said it in real life. I didn't know how the Nuggets were going to figure out a way to beat the Wolves. If they were getting mollywopped on their home floor, how in the world are the Timberwolves going to just stake it up on their home floor with all that energy because they rely on defense. And defense, to me, is about 75% energy and effort. And when your home court is giving you all that energy, that means you can put forth more effort, which means, in theory, your defense is going to be better. Didn't happen. Nikola Jokic just said, all right, hold my beer, and then beat up everybody for 3 straight games. I mean, just tormented the Wolves. They could not guard him to save anyone's life. But then the Wolves fought back. The Wolves were able to take Game 6. And I'm pretty sure, that was the game that they won by 50 points, right? That was the game where they the Nuggets scored 70 points and shot 30% from the field, which that's just bonkers to me. But regardless, the Wolves fought back. They were down by 18 points or something at halftime. Maybe 15 points at halftime in Game 7, and then they ultimately went down 20 points in the third quarter to the Nuggets in Denver and found a way to scratch and claw and found a way to win the game and moved on. They bounced to the champs, and I think at this point we got to take, obviously I think we were taking the Wolves seriously before this series started, but now, you got to figure nobody wants to play these guys. The defensive pressure alone is going to be overwhelming to some guys. Imagine if the Pacers played the Wolves in the finals. I could see a world where the Pacers just don't care and just shoot 60% from the field in that series if it happens. But at the same time, I could also see a world where they don't score more than 90 points in the entire series because the Wolves just say, nope, you're not scoring, and then they don't. That, I could see that happen as well. But yeah, the Wolves, they deserved to win that series. They earned every bit of it, and my goodness, wow. Able to beat the defending champs, who I think most people were saying, well, they're going to win it again. Jokic won MVP again, but it ultimately proved to be the depth, right? It wasn't the starting lineup. But in games in the playoffs where your starting lineup doesn't perform as well as it needs to, your bench is supposed to pick you up. But the Nuggets don't have a bench, really. They have Peyton Watson and Christian Brown, and that's just about it. So they don't really have a bench. The Wolves have a bench. Naz Reid, 6th man of the year. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, fantastic defender and can hold his own from the three-point line, although he did struggle in this series. I think he only shot about 27% from three in this series, something like that. Kyle Anderson, slow-mo. Obviously, doesn't do anything super great, but he's good at a lot of things. He's a good defender. He's a decent finisher. He's a good decision maker. Like, he's good at a lot of things. I'm sure there's other people that I'm completely forgetting, of course. But, yeah, I love what the Wolves have done to construct their roster. I'm very happy for them. Obviously, they haven't had any postseason success really since KG left. They've gone to the playoffs a couple times since then with Cat, but hasn't really amounted to much. The most memorable thing I can remember is when they won that play-in game and Patrick Beverley cried and was celebrating like they won the finals because they won a play-in game. I mean, good for you, man. That's great, but I don't know. That's the only thing I can remember them doing in the playoffs last couple of years. But yeah, good for the Wolves. We'll see how it goes. And transitioning from there, I do want to get into the Wolves-Mavericks second round series and kind of predict what's going to happen. I don't know, at all. Genuinely speaking, I do not know how to predict this series. I don't know who has the matchup advantage. I don't know, is it going to be the Mavs offense or is it going to be the Wolves defense? I don't know. All I know is, well, not even that I know. All I believe is that I truly think this series is going to go 7 games. I don't see a universe outside of the Wolves completely suffocating the Mavericks on offense that this series does not go 7 games. Because while the Timberwolves have a fantastic defense, one of the best and scariest defenses I've seen in years, they don't have an answer for Luka Doncic. So Anthony Edwards has already said, I'm going to guard Kyrie Irving. Great. Fine. So that means that either Jaden McDaniels is going to guard Luka, which I think is what's going to happen, and that would leave Mike Conley to guard Josh Green. Or flip those two, and you'll have Mike Conley guarding Luka and Jaden McDaniels guarding Josh Green. Either way, I think it's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And the reason is because Josh Green is not exactly a versatile offensive weapon, right? He's a slasher. He can shoot a little bit, but not a whole lot. He doesn't take a lot of shots, so he's kind of a glorified decoy at times on offense. He sets screens, he cuts off ball. He does some things that are good, but Mike Conley has been guarding Jamal Murray, a guy that can take over a series if you let him and hit game winner after game winner after game winner and just bury you in sadness. He was guarding D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves in the Lakers series, I'm thinking the Nuggets were playing the Lakers. What am I talking about? He was guarding Devin Booker and Bradley Beal in the Suns series. And Devin Booker played well, but Bradley Beal actually played horrific. So, but he's guarding those guys. That's what you save Mike Conley for, is to guard those guys. So if he guards Josh Green, he's not going to have that big of an impact defensively because he's guarding somebody that doesn't have a big impact offensively. He's not there. He's not going to negate really anything. And while Jaden McDaniels certainly earned his second team all defense, I think it should have been first, but that's just me. He's 185 pounds or 195 pounds, whatever he is. He's less than 200 pounds. Luka Doncic is not less than 200 pounds. So if you put Jaden McDaniels on Luka, Luka is going to have his way physically with McDaniels. Much like a guy like Jason Tatum can have his way with Jaden McDaniels because he's just so much bigger and stronger than he is. We've seen that happen to Jaden McDaniels all year, where if he goes up against a guy like Brandon Ingram or somebody like that, then he does fine. But when he goes up against a bigger wing, he struggles because he's just not sturdy enough to kind of handle himself in the post. So, damned if you do, right there, because Jaden McDaniels is probably going to struggle against Luka. And I think Luka is going to be more of a facilitator in the series, and Kyrie is going to take a lot more of the scoring. So, Tyler, why don't you flip that? Why don't you have McDaniels guarding Green and have Conley guard Luka? Yeah, he's still going to be small, but at the same time, he's quicker. He can get more steals. Yada, 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 right? So put Mike Conley on Luka. Well, again, he's not big enough. And number two, that means your best defender is guarding the worst offensive player on the floor. Okay, well then maybe put Karl Anthony Towns on Josh Green and put Jaden McDaniels on PJ Washington. Again, not going to work. PJ Washington's too big. So I think that at all times with that starting five, even with Josh Green on the floor, the Mavericks are going to have an offensive advantage somewhere on the floor. And weirdly, it's against the best defender on the Timberwolves. I know, it makes no sense. It seems counterintuitive. But to me, it makes sense, right? But on the flip side, what if I'm wrong? What if Jaden McDaniels just smothers Luka Doncic? And what if Anthony Edwards just does not allow Kyrie Irving to ever get going? And then you are basically relying on PJ Washington, who I am so happy for with how he's in Dallas and how he's performing, to win the Western Conference Finals for you against arguably the best defense we've seen in the last 5 years. I don't see how that's happening, guys. I don't. So I really could see this series going either way. What I do know is that Anthony Edwards is going to show up. I know that for a fact. He's going to average 30 in this series. Because as good as Dallas has been defensively since the playoffs started, they weren't guarding Anthony Edwards. They were guarding Shea, who did not play poorly, by the way, in the playoffs, or against Dallas. He played pretty well for the most part. And they were guarding Josh Giddey, who stinks offensively now, apparently. And then before that, they were guarding Paul George, who, yeah, a couple of games he played poorly, but there were also games where he dropped like 40 points. And James Harden, who, as good as he is, he's not who he used to be. Anthony Edwards is better than all those guys right now. Every single one of them he's better than, except for Shea, of course. So, to me, Anthony Edwards is just going to go crazy. I mean, what's he going to have? Luka guarding him the whole time? Kyrie Irving guarding him the whole time? Please, that's barbecue chicken for Anthony Edwards. Please. He just got done having Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on him, who's a really good perimeter defender, by the way. And Anthony Edwards, outside of Game 7, absolutely torched the Nuggets. Every single game. Luka or Kyrie or Josh Green, like none of those guys are better defenders than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They're not. So, Anthony Edwards is going to show up. I know that for a fact. The crux is going to be, can everybody else show up? Can Mike Conley continue to hit shots? Can Karl Anthony Towns step up against PJ Washington and actually be consistent on the offensive half of the game? Can he hold his own defensively? Because it seems like he's going to be guarding PJ Washington, who is hot right now and is a very versatile wing and has the agility advantage. And Cat's just not a great defender anyway. And then Rudy Gobert, sure, maybe his job's easier. You're going from guarding Jokic to guarding Gafford. So he'll help you on the interior, but I mean, I don't know. I don't trust him to show up all the time in the playoffs. He's never has until this year. So I don't know how much he's going to be able to keep it up. We'll see. I mean, people were calling for his head when the Nuggets were up 3-2, saying that he was a defensive player of the year, can't do anything against a Joker. Yeah, of course, nobody can. Nobody can. So this is the hardest series for me to predict out of the two. The harder series of the two. And I don't know if it's just morbid curiosity or if I just really want this storyline to play out, just so that I can flip a coin and be either really happy or really depressed by the end, if I'm a Celtics fan, and of course if the Celtics win. But I'm going Mavs in 7. I'm going Mavs in 7. That's my final prediction. I have underestimated the Mavericks for too long now. I have said that they were going to lose twice in the playoffs. They have proved me wrong twice. If they prove me wrong a third time, that means that they're going home. That's the way I look at it. If they prove me wrong twice or 3 times, it's because they're going home. I think that Luka, being a facilitator for all those other guys, for your Kyries, for your Daniel Gaffords, for your PJ Washingtons, for your Tim Hardaways coming off the bench, for your Dante Exums coming off the bench, I think that it's going to be less taxing on his back and on his knees. I think it's going to be easier for him, considering the matchups that he will have in this series. And I also think that they have stepped up enough defensively where I feel confident that they are going to be able to slow down some of the other guys on the Wolves enough to steal a couple of games in Minnesota. Because we've seen, look, Minnesota is vulnerable in Minnesota. They lost twice in Minnesota in that series. So, to me, I think the Mavs have just enough to walk into Minnesota in Game 7 and do what the Mavs did a couple years ago to the Phoenix Suns. Now, I don't think they're going to beat them by 50 like they did a couple years ago, but I think that they know, hey, we've been here before. We've been in Game 7s against teams that were quote-unquote better than we were on their home floor in Game 7, and guess what? We beat them. We beat them. I think the Mavericks have just enough. And that'll mean that Kyrie Irving will return to the finals for the first time since he was LeBron James' teammate. That's a fun storyline. And it's Luka Doncic's first finals. That's fun, right? PJ Washington gets to go to the finals. That's fun, right? Daniel Gafford was on the PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford were on the Hornets and the Wizards, respectively, to start the year. And now both of them may get to go to the finals in this world. I love that. I think that'd be fun. Okay, Celtics-Pacers. We'll start with the prediction, and then we'll go to reacting about Game 1. So the prediction. I will say Celtics in 7. Celtics in 7. I know, after last night, people are already saying that the Pacers are done. I don't understand how people can feel that way, knowing what the Celtics do in Game 2s. And just knowing, you know, that I feel like every time somebody says, like, oh, they're done, like, they just go out and they play amazing. I just feel like that happens every time. But I've said this multiple times. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast or not. But when the regular season was happening and as the postseason started, or maybe not even as the postseason started, but as the regular season was coming to a close and that, 4 through 8 battle was like getting really heavy in the Eastern Conference, I was just begging for the Pacers to not make the play-in. Because I was worried that they were going to lose their first game in the play-in to like the 76ers or to the Miami Heat, like somebody that's experienced, and then go out there and just put an absolute whooping on the Hawks or on the Bulls or whoever, right? And then we'd have to play them in the first round. And that's just, I watched every single game that the Pacers and the Celtics played this year, and it's just attract me, and it makes my heart go a million miles an hour, and it ages me by 40 years. I hate playing the Indiana Pacers because they just don't ever stop running around in circles and kicking the ball up, and somehow it goes in 60% of the time. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And it is remarkable, and I respect them for it. It is the perfect definition of basketball-controlled chaos. It really is. They foul like crazy. They turn the ball over like crazy. They barely defend for 3/4 of the game, and then they just shoot 60% from the field. They score 135 points, and they beat you 135 to 128, and they're happy with that. And you know what? Good for them. They know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they're good at. They're not trying to pretend to be anything they're not. Good for the Pacers. And that's exactly why I think the Celtics are going to struggle against them. It's because they just don't ever stop. And when you've got a team that just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs and runs, when you have to go play them in their place, they're pretty freaking tough to stop. Like, you've got to play a virtually perfect game against Indiana in Indiana if they are motivated to beat them on their home floor. Now, I'm pretty sure that they are undefeated in Indiana in this postseason. And it makes sense that they're undefeated in Indiana in this postseason. Because their fans just, like, inject them with adrenaline for 48 minutes. And it is really difficult to stop. They play better defensively, of course, on the road, which obviously helps slow teams down when you're playing better defensively. They get more turnovers at home, which allows them to move faster in transition and get easier buckets. And then, of course, role players typically play better. Your guys like your TJ McConnells, like your Ben Shepherds, like your Obi Toppins, like your Jalen Smiths. Like, you know, those guys just play better at home. They're more comfortable at home. So I think that the Celtics, like, they've got to win 4 games in Boston. But I don't think they're going to win 4 games in Boston. I think they're going to drop one of these games in Boston. It might be game 2. It might be game 5. I don't know. But it won't be game 7. Because I think that the Celtics, while they have struggled at home, they also have shown that they are more than capable of not only beating teams, but annihilating teams on the road in the playoffs. They just kill people on the road. They seem to be more motivated on the road. They seem to not try harder. That's not the way I mean it, but like they just seem to be more energized. Weirdly on the road. Like it's like, you know, backs against the wall, the world's against us, let's go. Let's go prove them wrong. And I wish they had that mindset at home, but they don't. It is what it is. So I think that they could beat Indiana in game 3 or game 4 at home, especially like if the Celtics win game 1 and game 2 at home, and the Pacers win game 3 in Indiana. The Celtics are really, really good at making adjustments and responding after a loss. So I could easily see them winning game 4. Then the Pacers desperately shoot 70% from the field in game 5 and beat you in Boston. Then you go back to Indiana, and then they tie up the series, and then you win in Boston. I could see that happening. And so sure, Celtics in 7. I really like it to be Celtics in 5. I really like to believe that that's what's going to happen. I just don't. I just simply don't believe that that's going to happen. And what a transition I'm about to make. And that's exactly, you know, game 1 is exactly why I think that it's going to go 7. It's a perfect encapsulation of it. Game 1 was crazy, wasn't it, guys? I mean, wow. Wow, what a game. Weirdly, so whenever I watch Celtics games, even if we're up by 30 points, if the other team hits like a transition 3, I start to get like that worry pains in my chest. Because I'm like, oh God, we're going to blow it. They're just going to go bing, 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 and they're just going to hit everything in 3 minutes, and then our lead's going to go from 30 to 6. And then we're going to die. Like that, I always feel that way because I have so much PTSD from it happening. Throughout my, you know, last 8 years of being a Celtics fan. But weirdly, in last night's game, up until the last 2 minutes of the game, or 4 minutes of the fourth quarter, I truly had no worry that the Celtics were going to win that game. Because I'm like, we're better than them. They're going to start missing shots. We're going to start making shots. It's going to be fun. But then it didn't really happen. And we blew it repeatedly, like missing layups, missing open three-pointers, you know, down by 3 if you're Jason Tatum. Thank you so much. I thought, I was like, wow, that's it. I mean, that's crazy. Like, are the Pacers better than us? Like, that's what I was thinking last night. I'm like, are they better than us? Because I don't think the Celtics played poorly. I don't think they played great, but I don't think they played poorly. And the Pacers just said, oh, you're not going to play absolutely perfect? Well, we're going to beat you on your home floor then. And so, like, when you have a team that, like, you have to play perfect against to beat, it makes you think that they're better than you, right? I mean, that's just kind of logical. So I'm thinking that, and then all of a sudden I look up and Jaylen Brown hits a 3 with, like, 4 seconds left. And you're like, oh, man, did we just hit a clutch shot? That never happens to the Celtics. We never, ever, ever perform in clutch time games. That's all the media ever says, is that they can't win close games. They can't win down the stretch. Yada, 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 yada. And suddenly, it's overtime, and I'm thinking, we're going to win this game, aren't we? Like it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? And I swear to you, I know that we're not going to talk about this because he hit a bunch of shots late in that overtime, but Jason Tatum did everything he could to blow that game. I mean, literally everything. He was missing layups. He was, like, bricking mid-range shots where it wasn't even close for that whole fourth quarter. He missed a 3 where there wasn't anybody in his entire, like, there wasn't another planet in orbit of his galaxy. And he missed it. That would have tied the game with about a minute left in the game or whatever it was. He missed 3 or 4 free throws during the game. So, like, he did everything he could to blow that game. But then, of course, when overtime came around, he had a big turnover, and, like, I'm just like, okay, Jason Tatum is, like, purposely, like, does he have money on the Celtics losing tonight? Like, because I know the Pacers were heavy underdogs, so he probably wouldn't a good amount of money. Like, that's what I'm thinking. And then he got that and one, and then all was right with the world. He hits that big 3. He hits a couple of free throws. Now he's got 8 points in overtime, and the Celtics end up pulling it out. They grinded it out. And look, I'm not stupid enough to think that the Celtics are going to play phenomenally every single game. I'd love for them to, because then we'd sweep our way all the way to the finals, and we'd probably win the finals in 5 or 6 games if we played up to our very best every single night. But I've come to the conclusion that that will not happen. We will not play up to our best every night no matter what we do, and no matter how much I want them to. And so on nights that, first of all, you don't have all your best stuff. Second of all, your second or third most important and best player is not on the floor in Kristaps Porzingis. And your opponent is making every single thing that they ever shot, they made. They made step through, buzzer beating, gonna kind of lunge forward against 2 defenders, bank shots with the time with, at the buzzer. We're making logo 3s, step back 3-pointers from your 7-foot center. Tough mid-range shots with 2 defenders around. Reverse layups with a bigger defender directly on your hip, and you somehow just throw it up there and it goes in. Like Andrew Nembhard hitting step back mid-range jumpers that I've literally never seen him hit before last night. Maybe it's just because I'm not paying attention, but I'm like, wow, I didn't realize he had that in his bag, but he does tonight. They were making everything, guys. When you're not playing at your best, the Pacers are making everything. Sometimes you just got to survive those nights. Because every day is a new day. You're hopefully not going to play like that the next night. You have to take what you have and you have to work with it. Sometimes when you're playing poker, you get dealt a hand that's really, really good, and you're going to have yourself a good night. Sometimes you get a 2 and an 8, and you just got a whole lot of nothing. Unless somehow, the river has a 4, a 5, a 6, and a 7, you're not going anywhere, guys. Like, with a 2 and an 8, you're not doing much. So, what do? On those nights that you're dealt a rough hand, you just got to survive. Those bad hands, you just kind of got to, all right, I'll hang around a little bit. I'm going to fold. I'll lose like $20. I'll, go on to the next hand. It's all right. You just got to survive. Don't go all in. You just got to survive. And the Celtics survived. And that, at the end of the day, is what matters, right? I mean, this is a series where you have to win 4 games. So it doesn't matter, history's not going to look back. If the Celtics win a championship this year, history's not going to look back and be like, oh, well, they didn't really play well game 1 against the Pacers. They really shouldn't have won the finals because they didn't play well in that one game against the... No. They're just going to say, oh, they won the series 4-3, or they won it 4-2 or 4-1 or 4-0 or whatever it is, and then they went and won the finals. That's all that's going to matter. So you just got to survive those games. And I honestly think, for the Celtics, last night's game was the absolute best case scenario. Why? Because the Celtics have a propensity for losing game twos. But why do they have a propensity for losing game twos? Because they go out in game one and they obliterate the other team, just blow them off the floor, don't even feel like they have to try. So they go into the locker room, they're puffing their chest out, they're like, man, these guys suck, we're way better than they are. And then they go out in game two and they lay an egg because the other team's now motivated because they just got they had their doors blown off. They make all these crazy adjustments that you've probably never seen and you're not prepared for, and then they shoot 70% from the field and 60% from three because you're not trying defensively. You allow them to get into a rhythm early and suddenly they can't miss. That's what happens every single time. Well, the Celtics didn't obliterate the Pacers last night. They barely scraped by the skin of their teeth, and many people are going to say the Celtics definitely should not have won that game. The Pacers literally handed the game to them on a silver platter. Or more accurately, the Celtics handed the Pacers the game on a silver platter, and Rick Carlisle threw it into the third row and said, no, I'm not calling a timeout. No, I'm not advancing the ball. No, I'm not fouling Jaylen Brown when I'm down 3 or when I'm up 3 and with like 10 seconds left in the game. It doesn't matter. I'm going to let him shoot, and it is what it is. I'll live with the results. Well, the results were he hit it, and then you lost in overtime, so hope you're happy. But that's more accurately what happened. But regardless, it doesn't matter. The Celtics survived, so you still have the 1-0 lead, which you needed in this series. My God, if you lost game one at home, I would have said we would have lost the series. Genuinely speaking. I'm not even joking. If we'd have lost game one, try telling the Pacers that they're not better than the Celtics after that. Try telling that team that they're the underdogs. Go ahead. The Celtics would have probably gotten swept. That's how like upset I was yesterday when we were going to lose that game. I'm like, I don't think the Celtics are going to bounce back. Because I don't think that they have an answer for the Pacers. I think the Pacers are genuinely just going to think, oh, well, we're going to beat these guys because we're better than them, and they're just going to shoot 55 or 60% from the field for the rest of the series. And 40% from three. Like, we're just dead in the water. That's genuinely what I think might have happened had the Celtics lost that game last night. But they didn't. They scraped by. And here's the thing. Instead of the Pacers, and instead of the media, which is also important, saying, oh, well, the Pacers are done. They're toast. They played like absolute garbage last night. They're never going to be able to beat the Celtics. What the media is saying is the Pacers' play was not the problem. It was their coach that blew it. And so I think in a lot of people's minds, the Pacers are probably going to say, well, screw it. We're just going to play the exact same way and not make any adjustments. Because guess what? We should have beat them last night, so we're just going to do the same thing because we're going to beat them. But the Celtics all saying, we're not happy. We're not happy that we're happy that we won, but we're not happy with the way we won. We have to get a lot better. We have to make adjustments. We have to start doing this, and this better. And so when the Celtics win and they're put in a position where they feel desperate and they feel like they have to make adjustments, that should excite you as a Celtics fan. Because I think there's a good chance that the Celtics come out and want to prove that game was not a fluke. And they just blow the Pacers' doors off. And at some point, there's going to be a regression to the mean. The Pacers cannot shoot 67%, 56%, 56%, 58%, 60% every game. They just can't. It's unsustainable. Eventually, you're going to start missing open shots because everyone's human. The average field goal percentage for an NBA team as a whole in a regular season game is roughly 48% from the field. That's about average. It might be a little less than that this year. I haven't looked at the numbers for this year. But in years past, it's going to hover right around that 47 to 49%. From three, it's about 37% to 38%. It's steadily going up as the years went along. It used to be around 35. Now it's, then it was around 36. Now it's around 37, 38 because you got plenty of guys now that are shooting 40% from three. I think the Celtics have like 6 guys that shoot 40% from three or 4, whatever it is, right? In the playoffs, that goes down. Your field goal percentage goes down. for a team. It hovers right around 45% as a team, and about 35 to 36% from three, because defenses pick up their intensity. So point averages go down. So eventually, I think the Pacers are going to have to start missing shots. It's going to happen eventually. It may not happen until Game 7. I don't know. Or I suppose it may not happen ever. But regression to the mean tends to always happen. Does anybody remember what happened in 2016, 2017 with the Houston Rockets? They shot 1 billion threes. They made 1 billion threes. And then in Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals, they missed like every single shot they took. It was just such a hard regression to the mean that like it was catastrophic timing. Like just catastrophic. I'm not saying the same thing's going to happen to the Pacers. But what I am saying is that regression to the mean seems to always happen, even to the very best teams in the NBA. So I would like to think that the Pacers are going to start missing shots eventually. And if they start missing shots and they start shooting 40% from the field to go back down to the mean, because they've been shooting 60% and 55% and all that stuff over the last, 5 or 6 games in the playoffs, then the Celtics are just going to annihilate them. They're just going to annihilate them. Because the Celtics haven't been shooting well. And so their regression in the mean is... So, I don't know, man. I could easily see this going 5. I think it's going to go 7. But I think if you're a Celtics fan, you should be excited for Game 2 because it's not like other Game 2s. Like, they have no excuse to come out and not be fired up on all ends. I mean, Jaylen Brown literally said, yeah, Jason Tatum finally woke up in that overtime. Like, he literally just said on national TV, like, yeah, our best player didn't really show up tonight, even though he had 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. Wild how that works, but it's fine. I can't do that. Let's just put it that way. I don't know. Anyway, there's no excuse for the Celtics to come out lackluster. And, I mean, while I know I said earlier, like, some media is not saying that the Pacers are done. There actually are some people that are saying the Pacers are done. I think it was Nick Wright on First Things First, or whatever his show is called. I think he said, like, no, the Pacers are going to just come out and be depressed and not care, and they're going to not believe that they can win. I don't buy that for even half a second. I really don't. I don't think that's going to happen. But I guess there are some people that are saying it. And so maybe with a super young team like this, if the Celtics come out to another super hot start, but this time they sustain that defensive intensity that they had for the first 90 seconds of the game, when it was like 12-0, maybe the Pacers do fold and show their bellies. I don't know. Because they're not a tough, gritty defensive team. They're tough and gritty on offense, but it's just because they run around like madmen for 48 minutes and, make everything. I don't know if that's gritty. I just say that's psychotic more than anything. But the Celtics have been here before. The Pacers have not. And so when it comes down to crunch time, as bad as the Celtics have been in crunch time, we saw it in Game 1. I trust the Celtics more than I trust the Pacers right now. And that has nothing to do with Tyrese Halliburton. I trust Tyrese Halliburton more than I trust anybody else on the floor for both teams in crunch time. But we also saw Tyrese Halliburton literally run into Drew Holiday's body, and Drew Holiday didn't even do anything, and Tyrese Halliburton just fumbled the ball out of bounds. When defensive pressure picks up in those late minutes, the Pacers may struggle mightily. Especially once Kristaps Porzingis comes back, because you can't do what people have been doing, which is high pick and roll, switch on to Hal Horford, dribble, step back, mid-range jumper, good. That's basically what everybody's doing. And you're not going to be able to do that down the stretch of games, because instead of Al Horford, that's going to be Kristaps Porzingis, and he's a much better perimeter and interior defender at this stage in their careers than Al Horford is. And he's obviously a bigger threat from 3, so you can't leave him by yourself, so you can't double-team people on offense, so chances are Celtics are going to have more points by the time you get to those late stages in the games than what they have been. So, Celtics in 7. It's my final answer. I think the Celtics are going to move on to the finals. And that would mean a Celtics-Mavs finals. And I'll talk more in depth about this if we get there, which, by goodness, we better get to at least the Celtics portion of that, or else I'm pretty sure everybody's getting traded. But there's nothing that frightens me more than the possibility of losing to Kyrie Irving in the finals. But there's also nothing that makes me more excited than beating Kyrie Irving in the finals. I mean, so it's just such a horrible coin flip that would be if the Mavs were to win. But then obviously Minnesota, I mean, we played them twice in the regular season. Both games ended in overtime, and both times the home team won. So talk about an even series. I mean, literally it's about as even as it gets between the two teams. So that would be very exciting. But we'll see what happens. So obviously in this scenario, I picked Celtics and Mavs, but we'll talk about that more as time goes along. And that's going to do it, guys. What did you guys think of the second round of the NBA playoffs? Is there anything that stood out to you? What do you guys think the Celtics' chances of winning this series in 5 against the Pacers? Do you think it's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen in the Western Conference? Let me know all that stuff in the comments section. But that's going to do it. Thank you for joining the stream, or thank you for watching it later if you have. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so very much, and I will see you all next time.